Moving on to the content. First, let's do an overview of the skeletal system as a whole. So as for the functions, obviously the most crucial function of a skeleton is the structural stability and physical protection of the body. That should be pretty easy to understand. Bones are hard and rigid, so if you have like this, lets you have like the physical shape that like a person has, like a finger or a hand or something like that. Beyond simple blobs like most organisms that don't have a skeletal system, so I think like jellyfish or something like that, or like worms, they don't really have like a straight rigid structure. They're just like kind of like blobby, whereas we are more like stationary. We can walk upright, things like that. It also acts as an anchoring point for our skeletal muscles, which we covered in an earlier lecture. Skeletal muscle is like all your muscles that let you move your body, essentially, like your biceps, triceps, lats, everything like that. All your pecs and everything like that, your abs, all of those muscles, they're anchored and tied to your skeleton, and they essentially like move your skeleton. So if I was to give an example like my biceps, they actually just move the skeleton. So when the bicep contracts, it just pulls the bone, the actual skeleton, this way. And then when it relaxes, it pushes it that way. Triceps the opposite, it moves it this way. Then when it relaxes and the bicep curls, you can do it this way. Right, so they're anchored onto the skeleton and they move the skeleton. That's how you move your arms, your legs, your jaw when you talk, your head, neck muscles, everything like that. Okay, so they're very important for moving our bodies, their muscles. The skeleton also offers great protection against physical injury. Thus, sensitive and vital organs are usually protected by a lot of bone. Obviously, bone's hard. It's very easy to protect things. So, for example, the brain is protected by the skull. Skull's very hard, and brain's obviously very important. So you want to protect it. So if you get hit in the head, your brain doesn't suffer a lot of damage because your skull can absorb most of it because it's very hard. Obviously, to get hit really hard, it can break the skull, or you can get a concussion when the brain bounces around or something like that. But generally, it's more protected. The heart is protected by ribs. Heart also very important, very vital organ. You have your ribs and your chest plate, which basically stops any hits or injuries any light injuries that might threaten your heart or your lungs, which are also in this area as well, also protected by the ribs. Okay, so some animals like humans, mammals, birds, most reptiles, etc., they have an internal skeletal system consisting of calcified bones. And this is what we usually think of when we think of a skeletal system, but it's actually called an endoskeleton. This is only part of what makes the skeleton like a skeleton. You can also have a different type of skeleton called an exoskeleton, which other animals such as bugs and crustaceans have. And it's an external chitinous covering which acts as a skeletal system as well, except it's on the outside. Instead of our bones are on the inside, theirs are on the outside. And they're not bones, they're like chitin. And it's called an exoskeleton. Like mentioned, the exoskeleton is composed of chitin, which is fibrous polysaccharide. So it's basically like an amino sugar, kind of amino sugar hybrid. You've actually probably eaten this before if you've had like the shell of like shrimp or crab or lobster. As you can see here, those are crustaceans. Maybe some people even eat like bugs, like they eat like spiders and scorpions. So those also have the shell, also made of the same material. It is also relatively hard for their size, and similar to how our skeletons are hard and tough and act as protection. Obviously, if you step on a bug or you step on like a shrimp, you're gonna break its skeleton, but it's just because of the big difference in power between us. But like if you were to look at like a bug versus a bug, some of the bugs can't like hurt each other because some are very armored, essentially, with this exoskeleton. The exoskeleton also has muscles bonded to the inside rather than to the outside, like an endoskeleton. So if I were to draw here, like I mentioned, you have like a bicep. It's actually bound to here, like this would be your bicep, right? Bound to this skeletal muscle. And you can see it's on the outside of the bone, whereas with like a crab or like a spider, the muscles that move the legs will be inside the actual skeleton, will be inside the shell. And so on the interior, and they move from that way. And typically animals that have an exoskeleton, actually because of this, they're able to have much stronger muscle contractions relative to their size. Of course, that's why you like one of the strongest animals for their size, for their weight, is the ant, which can lift many times its body weight, or like a grasshopper, which can jump many times its like height, because it has very strong muscles, because it has like this exoskeleton and the muscles on the inside. Whereas something like a human or like even an elephant, they're not that strong compared to their body size, and can't do the feats that these bugs can for their size, of course. Okay. Next, let's talk about cartilage. So cartilage is a fibrous tissue made up mostly of proteoglycans and glycosaminoglycans. It's much softer and less rigid than bone. It can be found all throughout the body, in ears, nose, in your trachea, and most importantly, near bones, near the bones in tendons and ligaments, and even on the surfaces of some bones. Its main function is to resist compression, sort of like a mattress for our bones. So if you were to jump off a very high area or like a high surface, you would want to have like a mattress or a trampoline or something under that to kind of cushion your fall so you don't break. Same thing with our bones. When you physically jump up and down, you would put a lot of pressure and strain when you land on your bones, and especially on your legs and all that. And they might even actually like crush under the pressure or suffer a lot of strain if they were just completely unprotected. But between your bones, you also have this soft cartilage, which kind of acts like a mattress, like a cushion. And when you land on your legs from a jump, the cartilage will absorb a lot of it, and it'll kind of like cushion the fall, and your bones will have a lot less stress on them. They also provide a lot of flexibility to nearby bones, so you can actually like move a lot. Like you have a large range of motion because you have cartilage surrounding most of your bones, and a lot of the joints, which we'll talk in a second about, which also contain cartilage, your tendons and your ligaments. The reason that they're so flexible and you can move your arm, like your elbow, a lot, you can move your neck a lot, is because of this cartilage. Loss of cartilage in joints is often the result of diseases such as arthritis, which I know a lot of people suffer from, causes pain and loss of mobility. So for example, if you have arthritis in your hands and your wrists, you can't really like move anymore, and the actual bones start grinding against each other, and they have a lot of friction because cartilage is usually mostly frictionless. So when you get rid of that, you have a lot of friction. They kind of rub against each other and degrade and cause a lot of pain. It's very difficult to move, and you have to lose a lot of flexibility and a lot of movement in your wrist and your fingers when you have arthritis. So cartilage is very important, and diseases that result in loss of cartilage can be very bad. Okay, next is ligaments. So ligaments are bands of tissue that connect bone to bone. And tendons, which we're not really going to talk about because there's not really that much to talk about, but tendons connect muscle to bone, and ligaments connect bone to bone. They hold ligaments hold bones together and prevent joints from moving in directions they aren't meant to. Like for example, preventing the elbow joint from bending side to side. So if I were to have my elbow right here, I can move my elbow freely this way, forward and back, but I can't move it like really side to side. It's a lot harder, and I have to move my shoulder as well, or I have to move this part of my shoulder. I can't just like move this like that way without like moving the rest of my arm. And that's because there's ligaments here that kind of prevent that motion. They kind of like similar to like a door hinge. Door, you can move it, you can open and close it, but you can't like move the door up and down because it's on a hinge and it can't like move up and down. It prevents that movement in that direction. Same thing with ligaments, right? And this is also again to prevent damage and create like a certain motion that each joint can do, and prevent damage to it by moving in directions it's not really supposed to go. Okay. The ligaments are usually made up of various elastic fibers, cartilage, collagens. Where like you don't really have to know like the very specifics of it. And if you do again for the MCAT, they will give it to you in a passage and they'll tell you exactly what specific maybe fibers, what proteins are found in it, anything like that you need to know for that specific question. You should just know like the general, and then if they give you a passage on it, maybe then you'll be able to kind of read it and hopefully understand it enough using the limited knowledge you already have and the knowledge they give you, you'll be able to figure something out, right? But usually you don't have to know this unless it's with a passage. You don't have to know this off the top of your head.